Pravit moi druzy. Hello, my friends. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm a professor who tries to help you understand some context of what's going on in the war in Ukraine. Today, I want to do something that I haven't done for a while. So for a couple hundred days, I spent time trying to go through the day's news every day rigorously and try to analyze what's going on. And I've since shifted to just highlight certain ideas or things that I thought were more important. And in that, while I was going through the news, I'd also look at RT, and then that morphed into a segment called Fun with Russian State Media, and so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have some fun with Russian state media. So we're going to look at a lot of RT and a little Pravda here. So they're talking about the Pentagon leak. The leaked Pentagon files could be a deception. By the way, all of these files that are articles that I'm going over are within the last 24 hours, okay? So this is just the Russian state media perspective, and they're doing things for certain reasons. So leaked Pentagon files could be a deception operation, Moscow says. The Pentagon documents leak could be part of a campaign by Washington to deceive Moscow, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov has claimed. Now, generally speaking, when you see Russian state media say something about Ukraine or about the US or about the West or whatever, that's what they do. So that's not always the case, but it's a good rule of thumb to ask yourself, hey, is that what's going on? He said because the U.S. is party in the conflict, that's why they're doing this. The U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin said on Tuesday that the government was taking the leak very seriously and would turn over every rock during its investigation. In a statement on Sunday, the Pentagon confirmed that at least some files appeared to contain sensitive and highly classified material, however, disputed the accuracy of the information. Well, it looks like somebody somewhere, whether it was Russia or somebody, and they're blaming the U.S. for doing it, changed some of the numbers, particularly for Russian and Ukrainian casualties. There was a British defense source that said it's not what happened in international airspace over the Black Sea. Israel has rejected claims of the Mossad intelligence agency was encouraging anti-government protests. So there's some question about what's actually going on. They want to have questions about what's going on so that if it's not like they're saying A, no, it's B. They're saying we don't know if it's A or B or C or D because that really muddies the water. Now, by the way, see this article? I cut and paste the entire article here, and then when I Google searched it, guess what I found? The entire article in an Iranian news source. Tasnim news agency. It was all there except for the last line. Look at this. Everything here. So let's look at the paragraphs. The disclosed files in a statement on Sunday, a British defense source, Israel meanwhile. Okay, and then look, the U.S. Disclosed files in a statement on Sunday, a British defense source, but nothing but about Israel in this Iranian one. But it was the whole thing was a cut and paste of that RT, and they know that when they put this out in RT, it's going to be picked up by Chinese media and Islamic news media, and African countries will pick it up and just wholesale copy and paste the article. So they're getting some extra extended play out of it. Okay, let's keep talking about this subject. U.S. intel leak may have originated outside the Pentagon. Now, sometimes when you read this, you find things that are like, well, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that angle before. So this was according to Fox News. The trove of dozens of documents had been circulating online for weeks, possibly months, but came under media government scrutiny last week. Many of the papers focused on the Ukraine crisis and appear to be Pentagon briefs prepared for senior U.S. officials. So maybe it didn't leak from the Pentagon. Maybe it was prepared for senior officials and it fell into the wrong hands. The officials somehow made it link for some reason. Who knows which officials or for why. Or maybe some of their staffers let it leak or something along those lines. Fox noted that if secure devices were used, investigators can track where they were printed. The U.S. government has neither confirmed nor denied the authenticity of the documents. The batch of documents indicated that the U.S. was spying on some of its closest allies, and we talked about that yesterday, and publicly displaying more confidence in Ukraine's military capabilities than it actually had. They really want to amplify that last line about publicly displaying more capabilities than it actually had. But again, you can learn things from reading the other side that might be a perspective that you just hadn't considered before, and the way that they amplify certain things that are said in the U.S. Or other Western press. Another article, Pentagon chief grilled over leaks, has no new information than what you had in this article and what you have in this article and what you have in the next article. There's really not a lot here that's anything different than what we see elsewhere. So here's another article, Pentagon leak exposes NATO special forces in Ukraine. One of the classified U.S. military documents leaked online shows the presence of 97 NATO special forces operators in Ukraine as of March 2023. Now, if you just read this headline, you're thinking, wow, see, NATO's on the ground bringing the fight to the enemy. Well, that's not necessarily what it was. So if you read down, sometimes they'll tell the truth, but they'll somewhat twist it, the perception of it, until you actually read down deeper. And then there's something a little bit more true. The U.S. had 14 special operatives in the country, and France had another 15. But let's keep going. Another UK outlet, Declassified, noted that the 14 U.S. special operators were among the 29 Pentagon personnel present in Ukraine, which included the Marine Security Detachment at the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv and military attachés. So what's the problem of special operators being attached to the U.S. Embassy? There's nothing there. Another 71 State Department personnel were listed as being in the country as well, amounting to over 100 Americans. So what? I mean, that would be a normal kind of thing. That's different than that they're out there operating, doing special secret missions, that kind of thing. So you've got to take what they say with a grain of salt, and you have to read it and try to understand what's real and what's not. And it's a little bit more opaque. While Washington and London have never officially confirmed the presence of their special forces in Ukraine, multiple media outlets have reported on it over the last year. Okay, so there's not much to see here. Okay, last one about this, I think. Yeah, this is the last one about the intel leak. Donbass leader questions the Pentagon leaks on Ukraine. Denis Pushlin believes that the revelations could have been intentional as part of an attempt to mislead Russia. So you're hearing the same line again and again. It's intentional. It's coming from Washington. It's trying to mislead. Now, what's most interesting about this article was this line. The acting head of Russia's Donetsk People's Republic. Like, isn't he like the head of the Donetsk People's Republic at this point? Like, hasn't that been verified? Denis Pushlin has questioned the authenticity of recently leaked Pentagon documents. Pushlin noted that the whole world is abuzz discussing the leaks. A number of countries have since started to doubt the authenticity of leaked documents, including Ukraine, which has portrayed them as Russian ploy to derail Kyiv's planned offensive. Okay, Western media seems to be actively trying to create an information tsunami about the topic, said Pushlin, who suggested it could mean leaks may have been deliberate. Well, we don't know if they're deliberate. And that could be, right? They could be a deliberate attempt to deceive. They could also be that they were leaked, and that was wrong, right? It could be that it was Russia planting stuff. It could be that it was Ukraine's misinformation. We don't know, right? The DPR head added that the West was indeed trying to mislead. If the West was indeed trying to mislead Russia, it would not succeed because in the bitter experience, listen to this line, in the bitter experience of our interaction has taught us to treat everything with a significant amount of skepticism. This is the way that Russia operates, as well as the leaders in the DPR. Treat it with skepticism. If you want to read a great book, Putin's Playbook, by Koffler, I think is the name. Putin's Playbook is an awesome book that helps you understand how Russian propaganda actually works. Okay, another article. So Kremlin pours cold. Oh, so here's about Twitter. Musk calls out BBC reporter over lies. Now they've banned Twitter in Russia, and they like to pick on Musk as a consequence. At one point in the interview, Clayton asked Musk to respond to claims that hate speech had become more prevalent on Twitter. After Musk asked the reporter to clarify allegations, Clayton claimed that he had personally seen more, quote, hateful content. Okay, so they're talking about lies on Twitter. He was asked to define what he meant by hateful content and to provide at least one example of what he had seen, and Clayton replied that he views hateful content as, quote, slightly racist and, quote, slightly sexist, but struggled to provide any examples, admitting that he hadn't actually used the feed for several weeks. Then I say, sir, this is Musk's response, that you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, so there's not a lot here, but we know that Twitter's got this issue and there's a fight about Twitter, and that's what's going on here. Now, the Kremlin pours cold water on a proposal to unblock Twitter. This is happening simultaneously. So that last article probably wasn't an accident because it's going with the Twitter narrative. The platform still doesn't comply with Russian law. Well, what's Russian law? You can't say bad things about Russia. So it's essentially muting free speech. So if you say Russia is a terrorist state, certainly not. If you say a war instead of a special military operation, that's wrong. So you can't say that on Twitter, and that's why Twitter's banned. Whatever this guy's name is that I can't pronounce, Roskomnadzor, expressed similar sentiment on Monday, stating that if it has a list of around 1,300 Twitter posts which are in breach of Russian law. Now, I'm sure that there's far more than that because the Russian law, it strangulates free speech. On Sunday, Twitter CEO Elon Musk was accused of, quote, not abiding by sanctions over his refusal to crack down on the account of a former Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev. Musk argued in response that, quote, all news is to some degree propaganda, and claimed that he had been told that Russian President Vladimir Putin, quote, called me a war criminal for helping Ukraine, so he's not exactly my best friend. Okay, so look, Twitter is trying to be all about free speech, and an authoritarian regime that is not all about free speech is going to be at odds with it. So then you go to the next one. Russian-made app passes YouTube, it says, according to the media. Telegram Messenger passed YouTube in terms of daily Russian users last month. Now, that's not in terms of world users, but in terms of daily Russian users. TASS news agency reported. The daily audience for Telegram amounted to 50 million people last month compared to 50.9 as opposed to 50.7 in a day for Google-owned platform of YouTube. Okay, so in Russia, it's more popular, and it's looking like it's a great thing that our own thing is working better than the West's, and that's the way that this is being purported. Facebook itself was banned in Russia in November last year after its parent company Meta amended its violent speech rules to allow for calls for death to Russians in the West. So they're about free speech, and an authoritarian regime that's not about free speech are going to be at odds. Okay, Ukrainian counteroffensive could be postponed. Now, this goes back to what we were talking about with the leaks. The much-touted Ukrainian counteroffensive may not get underway until this summer, as the country's prime minister has told The Hill. Okay, Washington Post reported on Tuesday, citing alleged leaked Pentagon documents, that U.S. intelligence had been skeptical in February as to whether Ukraine would be able to make significant territorial gains with the counteroffensive, according to some documents. According to supposedly classified document, Kyiv faced significant force generation and sustainment shortfalls. The separate part of the leaked trove suggested that 5 of the 12 combat-credible new brigades expected to spearhead the counteroffensive had yet to start training at that point. What are they focusing on of the trove of documents? Those that make Kyiv look weak and those that make Russia look awesome. So that's what they're trying to highlight here. And so they're not exactly objective in trying to show the whole picture. They're trying to show that their opponents they're trying to get propaganda value out of it. Half of the fresh brigades badly lacked the necessary equipment as of late February, the paper claimed, citing those analysis by the U.S. military. The Pentagon is also said to have raised the alarm over the depletion of Kyiv's air defenses. And that's a legitimate thing. The S-300s and artillery and such. Okay, U.S. defense officials have announced that at least some of the information could be sensitive and highly classified material. So they're trying to verify all these bad things that are in here, and that's going to be a talking point that Russia wants to promote. Okay, another article. Russia Central Bank rules out currency restrictions. Okay, so I'm not going to belabor this one, but there's no need to reinstate capital controls. And what they tried to do last year, the Russian government introduced strict controls on capital movement, including mandatory sale of 80% of Forex earnings in response to Western sanctions. So that capital was supposed to come home, but that's now crippling businesses that are not going to be able to continue to generate capital. So it was a bad idea. And so we have no more need to do this because we're doing so awesome. And another one with this, the IMF talking about Russian GDP outlook. The GDP is expected to grow 0.7% this year, upwards from the revision of 0.3% that the IMF predicted. But the IMF is using kind of funny numbers. Okay, so let's just shorten this. Instead of going over the numbers and the percentages and all this, how is it possible that when you're in the middle of a war, spending millions of dollars per missile every time that you fire on your enemy, and so you keep depleting your reserves, how is it possible that in the middle of your destruction of money, of personnel, of equipment, of all these other things, of losing your pipeline for gas, of losing your way of shipping oil inexpensively and having to ship it at a lower cost than you want, and all these other factors, that you're actually able to grow your budget, it's not going to happen. There's some funny numbers, and I'm not enough of an economist to be able to tell you what exactly it is. But and there was a little bit of this that was true in here. Russia's budget deficit was 2.4 trillion rubles, or 29 billion in the first quarter, down from a surplus of 1.3 trillion, or a surplus of 13 billion, led to a deficit of 29 billion. Okay, in the first quarter in 2022. Yeah, so there was a little bit of truth in here, but I don't believe the Russian central bank any further than I could throw the thing. And there's something's just not right here, but they're making it look like, oh, see, we're very strong. And that's the message that they have to keep saying to their Russian and to their would-be allies audience. Okay, now some of these articles are articles where it's a perennial kind of thing to show how awesome they are. We're testing our intercontinental missiles, or look how bad it is in the West. The Brits cut back on luxury, say Barclays. More than half of Barclays cardholders cut spending on luxury items and one-off treats, while 6 in 10 trimmed expenses on eating out and purchases of new clothes, the bank said after collecting and analyzing credit card and debit card transactions. Overall, inflation on food and non-alcoholic beverages surged to 18% in February, the highest level since 1977. So look how bad it is in the West. That's the whole essence of this article, right? Now, we're going to look at Zach the Russian and what he did a year ago as opposed to what prices are now. And I sped up the speed of it to 1.5 times, so if he's speaking fast, he's kind of going to sound like me.
A local grocery shop in my hometown, Komsomolsk-on-Amur, and I filmed prices on the grocery there. At that time, I filmed this video just to show my fellow viewers about the prices in Russia for the groceries. However, times changed, and I asked my friend to go to the same supermarket where I filmed that video a year ago, and to compare prices. How much did they grow? I made all video in May 2021, so it's been almost 1.5 years, and let's compare how prices are different right now. One pack of pasta, which used to cost almost 59 rubles in May 2021, right now, it's about 78 rubles. So the growth is about 32%. A really popular instant noodles in Russia, which are called doshirak, they used to be about 16 rubles per one pack, and right now it's 21. So the growth is 31%. 1 kilo of rice used to be about 55 rubles, right now it's 76. So it's 38% more. 1 kilo of peas used to be 36 rubles, and right now it's 52. So the growth.
So everything so far has been 30 or 40% inflation in Russia. And I know this isn't necessarily looking at the exactly same time, but they were carping about how overall inflation for food and non-alcoholic beverages surged to 18% in February, the highest level since So, but what's going on in Russia? Well, it's pretty bad.
44.5%. 1 kilo of sugar used to be 59, and right now it's 76.5. So the growth is 29%. Tushonka, which is some kind of canned meat, which is really popular in Russia, used to be 137 rubles before the war, I mean in May 2021, and right now it's 189.98.
Okay, so you get the idea. I'm not going to belabor it. So they only tell one side of the story, and they make their opponents look very terrible. Okay, just a few more. U.S. making bioweapons components in Ukraine, says Moscow. The U.S. is using Ukraine to manufacture components for biological weapons, the commander of the Russians' nuclear, biological, and chemical defense forces told the State Duma on Tuesday. Now, the thing about this is, he's not providing any evidence, but he is saying we have no doubt that the U.S. is under the guise of ensuring global biosecurity, conducting dual-use research, including the creation of biological weapons components in close proximity to the Russian borders, he tells lawmakers. Now, this is the kind of thing that's going to be picked up by Tucker Carlson and then spread, because it's going to be news, so that's the kind of thing that Tucker Carlson is going to report about on his nightly program. So, it's a problem. Okay, next. Russia, now this one actually scares me. Russia adopts a law on new military draft rules. This is coming. This is the way that they're going to quietly remobilize. They're not going to close the borders in a dramatic, we need another 500,000 or something like this. They're going to start doing what you're seeing here. And this is why you should be reading the other side's news, okay? Russian MPs have supported a bill that introduces electronic draft notices for conscripts and reservists and imposes restrictions on those attempting to evade military service. The bill was passed almost unanimously by the State Duma. That's their lower house in Parliament, with all but one MP supporting it. Anyone who receives a summons but fails to arrive at a recruitment office within 20 days without a valid reason will be barred from registering as a sole proprietor or self-employed worker. Such an individual would be deprived of the right to real estate, have their driver's license suspended, would be prohibited from getting a loan in Russia. All restrictions will be lifted 24 hours after recruitment, the bill adds. So, and now this bill has yet to go to the upper chamber in their parliament, but it certainly will sail through. Putin will sign it, and that's how they're going to start getting it. So they might not close the borders, but this is the way that they're going to start to restaff. Okay, last one, and this one's from Pravda, not RT. This is a perennial favorite as well, but here's what the Russian ambassador is doing as Russia is in charge of the Security Council right now. Russian ambassador to the UN calls for military measures against the West. What's his complaint? There would have been peace in Ukraine long ago if the United States and its allies had not been piling arms into Ukraine, throwing thousands of new conscripts into this senseless meat grinder. Well, yeah, there would have been peace by you dominating rather than by them being able to defend themselves, but that's his complaint. So, okay, that's why you need to read RT and understand what's going on. If you cannot stomach it, at least watch like descriptions on YouTube channels like I do, but inform yourself one way or another. Okay, thank you for your time. Thank you for being willing to put up with the nonsense that I presented here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring. Thank you for the likes, the subscribes. Thank you for the coffees. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.